in a quiet little town where everyone knew each other's business, the arrival of a new student at Lincoln High School turned heads faster than usual. She walked into the school building on a crisp Monday morning, her dark curls bouncing with every step and an air about her that screamed confidence. The teachers introduced her as Amara, the new girl who had just moved from London. Her accent was smooth, her clothes stylish but not over the top, and her posture screamed someone who didn't care much for what others thought of her. The whispers started almost immediately. Students in the hallway nudged each other, pointing at her. Some admired her boldness, others were quick to judge. "Who does she think she is?" muttered one of the popular girls, the leader of a clique known for ruling the school cafeteria with sharp tongues and icy stares. They called themselves the Squad, though everyone else just referred to them as bullies behind their backs. Their ringleader wasn't thrilled about this sudden attention being stolen by some outsider. Amara seemed unfazed. When curious, glances followed her to the lunch table where she sat alone. She pulled out a book and began reading, completely ignoring the murmurs around her. It wasn't long before the Squad decided they needed to remind her of her place. After all, no one came into their school and acted like they owned it. They huddled together during break, whispering plans under their breaths, already imagining how intimidated she'd look when they put her in her place. But something about Amara felt different. For starters, she didn't seem nervous or shy, like most new students did. There was a calmness about her, as if she'd been through worse situations before. And maybe she had. No one really knew anything about her yet. All they saw was the surface. A confident teenager with a mysterious vibe. Little did they know, beneath that composed exterior lay secrets far beyond their wildest imaginations. Whatever they planned to throw at her, they were about to learn the hard way that picking on the wrong person could change everything, for all of them. By the second day, the Squad had already cooked up their first plan to rattle the new girl. They weren't subtle about it. Subtlety wasn't really their style. As Amara made her way down the crowded hallway, books tucked under one arm and headphones dangling from her neck, they blocked her path. Their leader stepped forward, arms crossed, a smirk plastered across her face. "Hey, new girl," she said loud enough for nearby students to hear. "We've got some advice for you if you want to survive around here." Amara stopped in her tracks, raising an eyebrow. She didn't look scared or even annoyed, just curious, like she was watching a bad movie unfold. The leader gestured to her friends, who began chiming in with petty jabs. One criticized her accent, mocking how fancy she sounded. Another pointed at her shoes, calling them too extra. Then came the comments about her clothes, her hair, her whole vibe. It was all meant to make her shrink, to wipe that calm expression off her face. But Amara didn't flinch. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, studying them like they were a puzzle she couldn't quite figure out yet. When one of the girls shoved a cup of coffee into her hands as part of their so-called prank, spilling it onto her pristine white sneakers, a gift from her late grandmother, Amara simply sighed. For a moment, there was silence. Everyone expected her to snap, to cry, to storm off in embarrassment. But instead she smiled. Not a forced, polite smile. A genuine, almost amused one. "Well," she said softly, her voice carrying just enough edge to catch everyone's attention. "That was creative." Before anyone could respond, she stepped past them, leaving a trail of murmurs behind her. Students whispered among themselves, trying to decode what had just happened. Why hadn't she reacted? Was she too proud to show weakness? Or was there something else going on? As the day went on, rumors started swirling. Some kids claimed she must be rich, maybe even famous back in London. Others thought she might have connections to powerful people, or dangerous ones. No one knew for sure, but one thing became clear. This new girl wasn't like anyone they'd ever met before. And while the Squad thought they were intimidating her, deep down, they couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, they'd picked the wrong person to mess with. It wasn't until later that week that Amara decided to open up, to an extent. During lunch, she found herself sitting alone again, this time under a tree in the far corner of the schoolyard. Most kids avoided her now, unsure of what to make of her after the hallway incident. But one boy, quiet and unassuming, wandered over and plopped down beside her without asking. He wasn't part of any clique or group. He was just there. "Hey," he said, pulling out a sandwich wrapped in crinkled paper. "Mind if I join you?" Amara glanced at him, then shrugged. "Suit yourself," she replied, her tone neutral but not unwelcoming. They ate in silence for a while, the kind of comfortable quiet that doesn't need filling with meaningless chatter. Finally, he broke it. "So, how are you holding up? People here can be intense." Amara chuckled softly, picking at the grass beneath her fingers. "Intense is one way to put it," she said, her voice tinged with amusement. After a pause, she added, "I've dealt with worse." Her words hung in the air, vague enough to spark curiosity, but firm enough to signal she wasn't about to spill all her secrets. The boy hesitated before speaking again. "Look, I don't know much about you, but I do know those girls. They're trouble. Just be careful, okay?" That's when Amara leaned back against the tree, her expression softening slightly. For the first time since she arrived, she let her guard down, just a little. "Thanks for the warning," she said, meeting his gaze. "But trust me, they have no idea who they're messing with." She didn't elaborate right away, letting the mystery linger between them. When he pressed gently, curious but respectful, she gave him a glimpse into her world. She told him about her family, how they weren't just ordinary people. Back home in London, her parents were known for their skills in martial arts and strategy. It wasn't just self-defense. It was a way of life. From a young age, she'd been trained to handle anything life threw at her. Physically, mentally, emotionally. Discipline ran through her veins like blood. And while most teenagers spent their weekends hanging out or scrolling through social media, she'd been learning how to anticipate moves, defuse conflicts, and protect herself and others. But she also shared something deeper. Why she was really here. It wasn't just a random move. A few months ago, something had happened back in London. Something dangerous. Without going into specifics, she explained that her father thought relocating to a small town would keep her safe. "He thinks places like this are quieter," she said with a wry smile. "Less complicated." The boy listened intently, sensing there was more to the story than she was willing to share. Still, what she did tell him painted a picture of someone far more complex than anyone at school realized. As they packed up their things and headed back inside, he couldn't help but feel a mix of admiration and unease. Admiration for her strength, and unease because he knew the squad wouldn't stop, not unless someone made them. And if they kept pushing Amara, they might regret it sooner than they thought. The squad didn't back down. If anything, Amara's calm demeanor only fueled their frustration. They couldn't understand why nothing seemed to faze her. Every insult, every snide comment, every attempt to embarrass her just bounced off like water on a raincoat. It was maddening. So, they decided to take things up a notch. No more subtle jabs or petty tricks. This time, they wanted to hit her where it hurt. It started small, but quickly escalated. Someone tampered with her science project the night before it was due, leaving her with a pile of broken parts and no time to fix it. Another day, her gym clothes went missing, replaced with a note that read, "Maybe this will teach you to fit in." Even online they struck, hacking into her social media account and posting ridiculous memes about her. At least, that's what they thought they did. But every move they made seemed to backfire in strange ways. When they tripped her during PE, hoping to see her sprawl awkwardly on the floor, she didn't fall. Instead, she landed effortlessly in a perfect roll, springing back up as if it had been planned. The entire class stared, stunned, while the person who'd stuck out their foot turned red with embarrassment. Then there was the social media hack. After boasting about their prank, the squad found themselves locked out of their own accounts the very next day. Their private messages were suddenly visible to everyone, revealing catty comments and secrets they'd rather keep hidden. No one could explain how it happened, or who was behind it, but rumors began swirling that maybe Amara wasn't as harmless as she appeared. Things got even weirder when one of the girls claimed she saw Amara walking home late at night, moving, with an almost unnatural grace through the shadows. Another swore she heard whispers coming from empty hallways whenever Amara passed by. None of it made sense, but the fear grew louder than their bravado. They tried convincing themselves it was all coincidence, bad luck, or overactive imaginations. Yet deep down, they knew something was off. Despite their escalating efforts, Amara remained unfazed. She neither confronted them nor sought revenge, at least not openly. Instead, she carried herself with the same quiet confidence, almost as if she was waiting for them to figure it out, on their own. And perhaps that was the scariest part of all. The realization that she wasn't playing their game. She was operating on an entirely different level, one they couldn't begin to comprehend. As the days turned into weeks, cracks started forming within the squad itself. Some members suggested laying low, afraid of what might happen next. Others insisted on doubling down, convinced that persistence would eventually break her, but none of them could deny the growing unease, the gnawing suspicion that they had picked the wrong person to bully. Whatever Amara was hiding, whatever skills she possessed, it was clear she wasn't going to let them win without a fight. And the more they pushed, the closer they came to finding out exactly what they were dealing with. One afternoon, the tension between Amara and the squad finally reached its breaking point. It happened in the locker room after gym class, a space usually filled with laughter and chatter, but now eerily quiet, except for the sound of sneakers squeaking against the tiled floor. The leader of the group had been waiting for this moment all week, her frustration boiling over. She couldn't stand how Amara kept slipping through their fingers like smoke, untouchable, unreadable, and utterly unshaken by everything they threw at her. "You think you're so special, don't you?" the leader snapped, stepping into Amara's path as she reached for her bag. Her voice echoed off the cold walls, sharp enough to make the other girls flinch. They lingered nervously near the doorway, unsure whether to intervene or let their fearless leader handle it. "What's your deal? Why won't you fight back?" Amara paused, her hand resting on the strap of her backpack. For a moment, she didn't say anything, just looked at the girl in front of her with an expression that was hard to read. Part curiosity, part pity. Then slowly, she straightened up and faced her head on. "I don't need to fight back," she said calmly, her tone almost gentle. "You're doing a good enough job destroying yourself." The words hit like a punch, leaving the leader momentarily speechless. When she recovered, her face flushed with anger. "Don't act like you're better than us. You strut around here like you own the place, acting all mysterious. What are you hiding, huh? Some big secret, or are you just full of it?" Instead of rising to the bait, Amara smiled faintly, a smile that wasn't mocking, but oddly compassionate. "If I wanted to hurt you, I could have done it already," she said simply. "But I'm not here for that. I'm here because I want a fresh start. You're the one who keeps making this about me." The leader scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, please, spare me the whole I'm above it all act. You think anyone believes that?" Amara tilted her head slightly, studying her like a teacher sizing up a stubborn student. "Fine," she said, her voice dropping just low enough to command attention. "Let's play your game. Tell me, why do you hate me so much? Is it because I'm new, because I dress differently? Or is it because deep down, you're scared?" The question caught the leader off guard. She opened her mouth to retort, but hesitated, uncertainty flickering across her face. Before she could respond, Amara continued, her tone steady but cutting. "You bully people to feel powerful, but we both know that's not real power. You push others down because you're afraid of being exposed for who you really are, insecure, lost, and desperate for control." Each word landed like a blow, not Violent but precise, dismantling the leader piece by piece. By the time Amara finished speaking, the girl's bravado had crumbled completely. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she took a step back, unable to meet Amara's gaze. The rest of the squad stared in stunned silence, too shocked to move. Without another word, Amara slung her bag over her shoulder and walked out, leaving the locker room heavy with tension. As she disappeared down the hallway, the leader sank onto a bench, burying her face in her hands. For the first time, she realized the truth behind Amara's words, and it terrified her. In the days that followed, things changed at Lincoln High, not dramatically, but noticeably. The squad, once untouchable and intimidating, suddenly seemed quieter. Their leader avoided eye contact with Amara in the hallways, her usual strut replaced by hesitant steps. The others drifted apart, each trying to distance themselves from the drama they'd stirred up. It was as if their confidence had been punctured, leaving them unsure of how to act or who they were without the mask of cruelty they'd worn for so long. Amara, on the other hand, didn't revel in her victory. If anything, she seemed conflicted. She'd stood her ground and defended herself, not with fists or harsh words, but with precision and insight that cut deeper than any insult ever could. Yet instead of feeling triumphant, she felt a strange emptiness. Revenge, she realized, wasn't as satisfying as people made it out to be. It didn't fix anything. It only left scars on both sides. One day, during lunch, the boy who had shared her table under the tree approached her again. He sat down without asking, setting his tray beside hers. "You okay?" he asked softly, glancing around to make sure no one else was listening. Amara nodded, but didn't say much. Sensing her mood, he added, "You showed them what they deserved, but does it feel like it's over?" She thought about his question for a moment before answering. "Not really," she admitted. "I don't think I wanted to hurt them. I just wanted them to stop. But now, I don't know. Maybe hurting them isn't the answer either." Her honesty surprised even herself. For the first time since arriving, she let someone see the cracks in her armor, the doubt, the weariness, the longing for peace. The boy listened quietly, nodding. "Maybe you should talk to her," he suggested carefully. "Not because she deserves it, but because maybe it'll help you move on." After some hesitation, Amara decided to take his advice. Later that week, she found the squad's leader sitting alone on a bench near the football field. The girl looked up, startled, when Amara approached. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Amara broke the silence. "I'm not here to gloat," she said gently. "I just wanted to understand why." The question caught the girl off guard. At first, she bristled defensively, ready to snap back, but something in Amara's tone, calm, sincere, made her pause. Slowly, reluctantly, she began talking. She confessed how hard it was to live up to everyone's expectations, how terrified she was of losing control, and how bullying others had become her way of coping. Her voice cracked as she admitted she hated herself for it, but didn't know how to stop. Amara listened without judgment, nodding occasionally. When the girl finished, tears streaming down her face, Amara offered a small, sad smile. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," she said softly. "None of us are perfect, but we can choose to do better." It wasn't forgiveness, exactly, but it was a start. As Amara walked away, the girl sat there, staring at the empty space where she'd stood, realizing for the first time that maybe she wasn't trapped in her own cycle of fear after all. By the end of the semester, life at Lincoln High had shifted in ways no one could have predicted. The squad wasn't a squad anymore, at least not in the same way. Their leader, once the self-proclaimed Queen Bee, began keeping to herself more often. When she did interact with others, it was quieter, gentler, like she was testing out a new version of herself. Some students noticed the change and gave her space. A few even reached out, offering hesitant smiles or small acts of kindness. It wasn't an overnight transformation, but it was progress. Amara, meanwhile, had become something of a legend, not because of her skills or secrets, but because of how she carried herself. She didn't seek attention or try to dominate the social scene. Instead, she earned respect by standing up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. Once, when a freshman was cornered by older kids demanding his lunch money, Amara stepped in without hesitation. She didn't raise her voice or throw punches, just looked at them with that calm, unshakable gaze until they backed off. Word spread quickly after that. Kids started sitting with her at lunch, asking her advice, or simply enjoying her quiet presence. The boy who had shared her table under the tree became one of her closest allies. He never pried into her past or asked about the things she left unsaid, but he stood by her side whenever she needed support. Together, they formed a sort of unofficial team, helping quieter students find their voices and encouraging others to step away from toxic behavior. Slowly but surely, the atmosphere at school began to shift. Conversations grew kinder, laughter came easier, and people started looking out for each other instead of tearing each other down. As for Amara, she realized something important. This tiny town had given her exactly what she'd been searching for, a chance to start over, not just from the dangers of her old life, but from the weight of always having to prove herself. For the first time, she felt free to be whoever she wanted to be, not who everyone expected her to be. Her confidence wasn't about intimidation anymore, it was about connection. When the final bell rang on the last day of school, Amara stood outside the building, taking in the familiar sight of the brick walls and crowded parking lot. She knew she wouldn't forget this place or the lessons it had taught her. As she turned to leave, she caught sight of the former leader of the squad across the courtyard. Their eyes met briefly, and the girl gave her a tentative smile before walking away. It wasn't perfect closure, but it was enough. On the drive home, Amara thought about everything that had happened since she arrived. What started as a fresh start had turned into so much more, a journey of growth, forgiveness, and understanding. She didn't know what the future held, but she felt ready for whatever came next. After all, she'd learned that strength wasn't about being untouchable. It was about finding light in the darkness and sharing it with others.